The people who've played GTA San Andreas, if they switch to GTA 5, they're likely to quickly understand the local underworld of that game, especially when it comes to street gangs. For example, in the third mission in GTA 5, Simeon sends Franklin and Lamar to a Vagos' neighborhood to confiscate a motorbike belonging to a guy who is a member of the Vagos. A player, even with little experience in San Andreas, should immediately connect the dots that those Vagos, they're those Latino gangsters dressed in yellow. The families, the gang of both GTA 5's and GTA SA's protagonists, don't have the warmest of relationships with the Vagos. Additionally, in the mission, we quickly get an undeniable confirmation of that, as between Franklin and Lamar and the Vagos, a big-ass shootout unfolds. A bit later, conflicts with the Ballas sneak into the story, and then especially a very similar pattern to GTA San Andreas is becoming apparent in our heads. One could say that it's a good thing, and that one quickly becomes familiar with all that. Can the same thing be said about GTA 3 and GTA 4? Is a good knowledge of the gang world in GTA 3 a helpful tool in getting to know the situation in GTA 4? That's what we'll be talking about today. In today's video, we'll take a look at whether Rockstar took any pages from the book of the gang structures they'd created in 2001 while developing GTA 3. We'll examine what stayed the same, what changed, and if we can spot any resemblances between the gangs in Liberty City from GTA 3 and those that appeared in GTA 4. Enjoy! We'll start a bit unconventionally with one of the smallest gangs in GTA 3, namely Southside Hoods. That gang was split into two factions, the Red Jacks and Purple Nines. Both groups held their turf in Wichita Gardens, in the neighborhood whose GTA 4's counterpart would be Northern Gardens in the borough of Bohan. However, before we talk about what the Southside Hoods look like in GTA 4, or if they exist at all, it's important that we remember what was going on with them in GTA 3. See, the Red Jacks and the Purple Nines were conflicted with one another. It was all about spank trafficking. One of the factions was definitely against it, while the other thought of it as a good business opportunity. And as one could guess, it ended up in an internal war. Okay, now let's get to the bottom of it, and let's see if that gang, or at least its echo, is present in any way in Liberty City from GTA 4. In GTA 4, unfortunately, we won't find Southside Hoods in their literal form. They're simply not present. But if I were to point at the gang that bears the most similar vibe, it would be the North Holland Hustlers. Same as the Southside Hoods, the North Holland Hustlers are also an African-American gang, and it operates in GTA 4 mainly in the North Holland area in the borough of Algonquin. What's more, it seems as if Playboy X and his so-called homie, Dwayne Forge, had strong affiliations with that gang. That can be concluded from the mission Holland Play, in which if we decide to kill Playboy, his guards, who are the members of the North Holland Hustlers, immediately begin to attack Nico. A similar situation is to do with Clarence Little, the guy whom we're asked to kill by Francis. If we spare him, then he later attempts to kill us, so I recommend getting rid of him at the first opportunity. Either way, in his case, it also wouldn't be wild to venture a guess that he was in one way or another affiliated with some faction of the North Holland Hustlers, or at least that he operated near their turf and had contact with them. In terms of the turf, unfortunately, it's hard to point out any direct references. The North Holland Hustlers, as the name suggests, operate mainly in North Holland, where Playboy's apartment is situated. That's a considerable distance away from Northern Gardens, which is GTA 4's counterpart of Wichita Gardens from GTA 3, so the territory doesn't match. But despite that, there is one thing which undoubtedly connects the North Holland Hustlers with the Southside Hoods: the internal conflict. An ideal example is the beef between Dwayne and Playboy. It's practically a copy-paste situation from the one from GTA 3. There, the Red Jacks had an issue with the fact that the Purple Nines began to sell spank, and here Dwayne leaves jail and claims that Playboy, his old friend, completely stayed away from the right path. Different times, different principles, and a conflict is born. Of course, it's not directly stated anywhere as far as I'm aware that their beef had its roots in drugs, especially that Dwayne himself was a crack baron back in the 90s. But here, it's more about the soul pattern and the motive. One side ceases to accept the way the other operates, and that on its own is enough to notice the similarity to the Red Jacks versus Purple Nines situation from GTA 3. And that's not all. Take the three Trenchers brothers, whom we eliminate in the strip club mediated by Dwayne. It turns out that they were doing business with Playboy, so no wonder that he was angry that Dwayne attacked them.
Nico, tell me it weren't you that shot up the strip club in Bohan.
You asked me to help out Dwayne. That's what I was doing.
Don't help him out when it fucks up my business interests. Damn, son, that ain't cool.
That only deepens the conflict and exposes the struggle to find a mutual language with the organization. Then we've got Javon, the lover of Dwayne's ex, who additionally was the one who sold him out to the cops. He was also a member of that gang. And there's yet another moment in which Playboy X wants us to cap one of his acquaintances because he was calling him a snitch and a wimp. The irony is that the guy himself was at that moment leaking info. Hypocrisy level max. So as you can see, when it comes to internal conflicts, Rockstar palpably took some information from what they'd created in GTA 3. What's more, we can spot a general tendency like that. If there's an African-American gang in GTA, almost always they face some inner crisis, arguments, or complete chaos. Cause take a look at GTA San Andreas. Already, sometime before the start of the events in the story, two sets of the families split from the main alliance. Later, during the game, we get a big twist. Big Smoke and Ryder betray Sweet and CJ, selling them out to the Ballas. And towards the end of the story, Sweet roughed up some guy dressed in the family's colors. Unless the guy had nothing to do with the families, and that was just a coincidence. In any case, leaving that example and going further, even CJ, also at the end of the story, is arguing with his brother a lot. Basically, that gang is just one big family drama. Literally and metaphorically. And in GTA 5, not much better. Stretch betrays the crew and cuts a deal with the Ballas, quietly trying to eliminate Lamar. Moreover, Franklin, at some point, has well enough of being in the gang. He straight up says that it's all just about the OGs leeching money from him, not giving anything in return. So there's definitely something up here. Rockstar, for some reason, very much likes to portray African-American gangs as organizations, which constantly face some problems within their own ranks. And that's being repeated starting from GTA 3 through GTA San Andreas to GTA 4 and 5. Alright, now we take into consideration the Chinese Triad. In the case of GTA 4, we have a direct equivalent, both when it comes to the name and the origins of the gang. But in terms of the structure and the overall design of the organization, Rockstar made a proper refurbishment here. Sure, either Triad is busy themselves with drug trafficking, but let's be fair. In 2008, practically every gang in Liberty City had something to do with the drug business. So that's not really a valid distinction. In GTA 3, the Triad was a pretty simple crew, based in Chinatown. Even though they looked independent, they were strongly supported by the Colombian Cartel, who were supplying them with spank, which the Triad were then selling on the streets. In GTA 4, we have the Triad on a completely different level. They still operate in Chinatown, but the whole organization is a lot more complex. We're dealing with three sets here, one led by the boss of the Triad himself, Xin Jiaoming. The second one was run by Kenny, and the last one managed by Zhu Ming. Each has their own interest, their own crew and business approach. When it comes to conflicts, at first, we have a similar situation to GTA 3. In GTA 4, the Triad are also beefing with the Italian Mafia. Example, the mission Harboring the Grudge, in which Nico and Paki infiltrate the Chinese's turf to snatch the meds they were smuggling into Liberty, mediated by Ray Boccino, a highly ranked member of the Leone family. But that's not the end. Later, Nico receives a task of stealing a big quantity of heroin off the Triad. So, a classic, Mafia versus the Triad, just in a refreshed edition. And also, granted, not in GTA 4 but in Chinatown Wars, we've got an interesting zest that has to do with the Triad's conflict with the Mafia. The protagonist of Chinatown Wars, Wang Li, at some point eliminates a guy named Rudy Davanzo. The man looks like a typical mafioso, although it's unknown to which family he belonged. I didn't mention him without a reason though. See, I managed to find a really interesting reference to the events of GTA 3 and Liberty City stories. In the LCPD record, it may be read that Rudy hates the Triads because his father was killed in a fish factory explosion, which was caused by the Triad. And now the best part. It seems like a mix-up of two different events from the 3D universe. In Liberty City stories, the Triads blew up the Leone's warehouse, and then a few years later in GTA 3, the Leone Mafia get their payback by blowing up the fish factory, which the Triad built in place of the former Leone's warehouse. I think Rockstar wanted to somewhat connect those two events and swoosh them together into a little piece of background lore. A cool detail. Going back to the main thread, the relations between the Triads with the Italian Mafia in the HD universe are not that unambiguous. Yes, it wasn't the best in terms of the Pegorinos, mostly conflicts and less friendly encounters. However, with the Messina family, they were on quite good terms for the majority of the time. Sure, Kenny was not exactly emanating enthusiasm about their alliance, but business-wise, it was a partnership, which we witness in GTA Chinatown Wars. It was similar with the Enchiladas. In that case, the two gangs were also collaborating, which is made apparent in the Ballad of Gay Tony. Therefore, as opposed to GTA 3, where the Triads were rather a minor player and sold spank for the cartel, in GTA 4 and CW, they're totally independent. They take care of the shipments, doing their own business, and their position in the city is stronger. And there's one more important difference. In the new universe, the Triad are not too tight with the Hispanic gangs. Quite the opposite. In Chinatown Wars, we see that they often fall out with the Puerto Rican gang of the Spanish Lords. So instead of an exotic partnership, clashes and grudges. Let's stay on the subject of the Spanish Lords, as they're the gang that can be easily called the closest equivalent of the Diablos from GTA 3. As if someone didn't know, the Diablos were a Hispanic street gang who held their turf in Hepburn Heights. And from a similar environment comes from Manny Escuela, that maniac from GTA 4 who was obsessed with his streets. During the plot, Manny tasks Nico with killing a few of the Spanish Lords' members, because, what a surprise, he didn't like it that they were selling drugs in the hood. Another example is Lyle Rivas, a guy who was overdue on his payments to Brucey and whom Nico kills in one of the missions. Going back to the main theme, the Diablos were a classic Latino gang, and their turf was located in the aforementioned Hepburn Heights. The counterpart of that neighborhood in GTA 4 could be Steinway in Dukes, but the Spanish Lords are not to be found there. Hence, when it comes to territory, it's difficult to make any specific connections. In terms of the conflicts, we also have big differences. The Diablos in GTA 3 were beefing with the Asian gangs, the Triads, and the Yakuza. Meanwhile, the Spanish Lords in GTA 4 rather collaborate with the Asians. Better yet, they share some of their territory in Alderney with the Korean mob, so it's definitely shown that we're dealing with a different approach than 7 years earlier. However, there is one cool detail which caught my attention. See, as we remember, the leader of the Diablos in GTA 3 was El Burro. Yes, the same El Burro who gave Claude missions via the phone booth in Hepburn Heights. And now the best part. In Chinatown Wars, one of the dealers of the Spanish Lords is also called El Burro. Coincidence? Perhaps. But knowing Rockstar, it's rather a subtle suggestion that the Spanish Lords were at least to some extent inspired by the Diablos. A spiritual inheritor, if you will, only modernized and written into the reality of Liberty City in the year 2008. One of the most important gangs in the story of GTA 3 is undoubtedly the Japanese Yakuza, which was most likely led by Asuka Kassen, or at least it was the highest ranking member of the organization that Claude has met. In GTA 4 though, we need to forget about the Yakuza. It's not there whatsoever. However, there is one gang that bears certain similarities with the Yakuza, and that gang is the Korean mob. What's interesting, its role in the story is episodic, but they do appear in a couple of moments. I'm talking about Kim Young-guk, a guy whom we helped smuggle merchandise to Liberty City in one of the missions given by Derek McCreary. And then later, as a matter of a plot twist, we kill him on John Gravelli's orders. In this case, apart from the fact that Kim comes from North Korea, which already takes us closer to Japan, there's another mutual point with the Yakuza. The thing in question is counterfeiting. Kim, as stated in the LCPD database, was conducting a counterfeiting operation, selling fake notes in the US.
Seems some Korean has come into the country and is selling money at a discount. You don't need me to tell you that it's all fugazi. Faker than a pair of Vinewood tits.
And as we remember in GTA 3, we also have a counterfeiting fraud, only that it's conducted by Donald Love. But as it was said in a few videos already, it was not always meant to be the case. Initially, Rockstar's plan was for Kenji Kassen to be faking money, wanting to impress his superior. Only later during the development of the game, Donald's governance adopted those missions. And here we have the main resemblance. Both gangs, despite different country origins, engage in counterfeiting frauds. However, let's be honest, if it comes to the Yakuza, there's no equivalent of it in GTA 4. We may talk some about the Korean mob, but it's just simply not the same. As a fun fact, I may only add that the motive of North Korean money counterfeiters is not solely Rockstar's idea. In one of the games, which many call a GTA clone, namely True Crime Streets of LA, one of the antagonists is a North Korean general who is conducting a counterfeiting operation in the States. He planned to invest the acquired funds in his national army. That all is not a coincidence. See, most likely both studios took inspiration from Ok Kuk Ryol, a high-ranking member in the government of North Korea who was identified by the US government as one of the key figures of the counterfeiting operation, as whose result, very quality $100 bills were being created, also known as super dollars. But that's all a side note. Meanwhile, let's get to something for which some of you were probably waiting with impatience: the Mafia. In GTA 3, we only had two Mafia families, the Leone family and the Farelli brothers, who were only barely managing to stay on the surface. However, in GTA 4, the Mafia system has been practically made from scratch. No Leones, no Farellis, nor the Sindacos, who appeared in GTA San Andreas and Liberty City stories. In their stead, we have as many as 6 families: Gambetti, Pavano, Messina, Lupicella, Ancelotti, and Pegorino. Additionally, in GTA 3, there was no such thing as the Commission, the organization that in GTA 4 unites 5 of those families, all apart from the Pegorinos, and whose task is to keep good relations between the Liberty City Italian families. And now, a question. Which of those families in GTA 4 could be an equivalent of the Leone Mafia? The answer is far from simple. See, the Leones are based on the fictional Corleone family from the Godfather movie. In turn, the Corleone family bears similarities with real-life mafia families of New York, such as the Bonanno family or the Genovese family. As the GTA community determined, the Bonanno family was most likely the inspiration for the Messina family, and the Genovese were an inspiration for the Pavano family. However, other than those influences, it's hard to find any similarities. In fact, the Leone family would be the most similar to the Pegorino Mafia, which at first glance seems weird, as the Pegorinos are the weakest mafia in town, while the Leones are definitely the strongest in GTA 3. But let's take Salvatore. Many say that he was a bit paranoid, especially looking at his stunt with Tony when he accused him of some petty stuff, despite the fact that Tony was his most loyal and trusted man. If we look at Pegorino, who also was always panicking that the Pavanos are gonna ambush him, that Ray betrayed him, that Phil is talking to the cops. In the end, it even led to him having his best capo killed, Ray Boccino. This funnily matches to how Salvatore suspected Tony, because both Tony and Ray had one thing in common, mainly that they were both owners of Italian restaurants. However, at least for me, it was hard to connect all those facts into some cohesive logic. In terms of the Farelli brothers, they're based more or less on the Rosato brothers from The Godfather. In turn, the Rosatos remind of the real-life Gallo brothers, Joseph and Albert. The first one was a member of the Colombo Mafia, which could have been an inspiration for Rockstar, while creating the Ancelotti Mafia in GTA 4. Albert, though, he was associated with the Genovese Mafia, so in GTA 4, the Pavanos. Sonny Farelli, on the other hand, is similar to Sonny Corleone from The Godfather, who, after all, was the Don of the Mafia, by which the Leone Mafia was inspired. Yet again, it's hard to make any sensible conclusions. We may agree about one thing, though. In GTA 4, the developers decided to design the Mafia structures from square one, and as a result, they don't have a lot in common with the ones from the 3D universe. In the end, we've got 2 gangs left from GTA 3. One of them is Jamaican Uptown Yardies. In GTA 4, we also have a big Jamaican community in Liberty City, whose heart is located in Shotler. Badman and Little Jacob's apartment is situated there. Not far, we'll also find the Jamaican bar Homebrew Cafe. We can see, judging by those 2 characters and the missions for Jacob, that the Jamaicans engage in criminal activities, mostly to do with drug trafficking. However, it's hard to say that they were properly organized as one. It seems more as if there were certain groups and each was doing their own thing, which actually led to various internal conflicts within the Jamaican community, which we could observe in GTA 4. In GTA 3, it looked differently, as the Yardies were a relatively well-organized group, which was in league with the Colombian Cartel. Although in GTA 4, the situation of the Jamaicans is less unified, the sole motive of Jamaican gangsters in Liberty City can be found in the HD universe too. Sticking to the cartel, this one is probably the worst situation out of all, because in GTA 4, there are simply no cartels, let alone Colombian. When it comes to Hispanic gangs, we've got the aforementioned Spanish lords and a small Dominican crew, but those don't have a lot to do with the cartel. Unless someone said that Elizabeta gives a similar vibe to Catalina. Both women are tough and ruthless, and both were selling drugs. Now, who would have guessed? But let's not try to make a mountain out of a molehill here. And let's just admit that there's simply no cartel in GTA 4. The cartel is present in GTA Online though. There, we have the El Rubio cartel after all, whose mansion we can rob, which is situated on the Cayo Perico Island in Colombia. El Rubio himself is also Colombian, and Cayo Perico itself contains various references to Colombian drug barons like Pablo Escobar, for instance. But that's of course a long way from Liberty City, so let's leave that story for another day. That'd be all for today. If you enjoyed it, then please like the video and subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications if you don't want to miss future videos. Thank you for watching. Until the next one.